Hello, all you freedom-loving people. Welcome to another episode of Front Page. I'm your host, Scott Cameron Goulet. We have a loaded episode for you today. After NIH Director Francis Collins announced his resignation, the NIH finally admitted to funding gain-of-function research in Wuhan. The question is whether Fauci, who repeatedly lied during congressional hearings, will face legal action. The U.S. has tightened its defenses against the theft of American technology by the CCP and is also severely punishing those involved. A CCP agent involved in the theft of trade secrets went on trial in the United States this week. This is a first in history. Precautions against the CCP are already the consensus of many governments. Several countries in the Asia-Pacific region have entered into free trade agreements with the United Kingdom and the United States to reduce their dependence on China. China's economy is also facing serious challenges, but things still look rosy in the communist media. And finally, we witnessed the power of people's hearts. President Trump's actions sent a company stock skyrocketing overnight. Okay, let's get into it. In a letter to Congress on Wednesday, October 20th, the National Institute of Health's Principal Deputy Director, Dr. Lawrence Tabak, formally acknowledged that the NIH did fund gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. This directly contradicts Dr. Anthony Fauci's testimony to Congress in May and July. Dr. Tabak's official letter to Representative James Comer, a ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, was posted on social media by Dr. Richard H. Ebright, a molecular biologist at Rutgers University. Dr. Ebright wrote in a tweet, "NIH corrects untruthful assertions by NIH Director Collins and NIAID Director Fauci that NIH had not funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan." He also noted that EcoHealth Alliance violated the terms of conditions of NIH grants. Mark Meadows, former chief of staff to President Trump, tweeted, "To call this a bombshell is an understatement." However, the NIH letter states that the coronavirus under NIH-funded research is unlikely to be the COVID-19 virus. Dr. Fauci, the director of NIAID, was under oath when speaking with Senator Rand Paul. He denied that the NIH funded the gain-of-function research in Wuhan. Perjury is a felony. Senator Tom Cotton tweeted, "Fauci knew he should be investigated and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." Lawmakers have repeatedly questioned Fauci's denials, and they certainly didn't miss the opportunity to take a swipe at him again. Representative Dan Bishop sent out a sarcastic tweet saying, "Evergreen tweet, Fauci lied again." The White House is relying heavily on Fauci to help the administration speak up on outbreak control policy. We don't know if Fauci will be investigated and prosecuted soon, but Mark Zuckerberg seems to have been abandoned by the White House. The District of Columbia Attorney General Karl Racine is seeking to hold Mark Zuckerberg personally liable in a lawsuit stemming from the 2018 Cambridge Analytica scandal. Racine filed a motion on October 20th to add Zuckerberg as a defendant in a consumer protection lawsuit originally filed in December of 2018. He alleges that Facebook misled users about the privacy and security of their personal data. This is the first time a U.S. regulator has specifically mentioned Zuckerberg in a complaint. Racine said, he made the decision after reviewing the company's documents. He said, "It's clear Mr. Zuckerberg knowingly and actively participated in each decision that led to Cambridge Analytica's mass collection of Facebook user data and Facebook's misrepresentations to users about how secure their data was." To shake off the scandal, Facebook intends to change its name. The rebranding is part of the company's future plan to become a metaverse company. This would position Facebook as one of many products under the parent company, which also oversees Instagram, WhatsApp, Oculus, and other groups. According to an October Quinnipiac University poll, 7 out of 10 Americans say social media companies such as Facebook and Twitter are doing more harm than good. The survey also found that 52% of Americans say Facebook does a poor job of handling misinformation on its social media platforms, while another 27% say it does a less than stellar job. Quinnipiac University polling analyst Mark Malloy commented on the results, saying that this is Americans speaking out. You're not helping, but are hurting the people. Yan Zhenshu, a Chinese Ministry of State Security operative, began his formal trial in the United States on Wednesday. He is the first CCP intelligence officer to be extradited to the United States to face trial. Xu is charged with conspiring and attempting to commit economic espionage and steal trade secrets from various U.S. aerospace companies. He was arrested in Belgium in April of 2018 and extradited to the United States for trial in October of that year. FBI agent Ton Vokus testified Wednesday about the physical evidence police collected during the investigation. His account of events was reminiscent of scenes from a James Bond movie. A message written in Chinese from the suspect's cell phone reads, "I put a USB drive in the eyeglass box in the middle of the bookcase, and it contains some encrypted documents. If something happens, someone will come to you and tell you the password." The message is from one of the 4 cell phones confiscated by Belgian police when they arrested Xu at a Brussels mall in April of 2018. Yan Zhenshu's colleague was holding his bag when police intercepted him. Money, 4 cell phones, memory cards, hard drives, magnetic keys, card readers, SIM card holders, and other devices were found in his backpack. Surprisingly, when the FBI conducted a forensic examination of the 4 cell phones, one of the confiscated phones was remotely wiped of its data. As a result, the agents found almost nothing. But on another phone, the FBI found family vacation photos of a General Electric engineer who had been contacted by Yan Zhenshu. Prosecutors accused Xu of trying to recruit the engineer as a spy. Also included in the phone was a note about the composite material and dimensions of fan blades, which prosecutors said was the technology that the CCP wanted to steal from GE Aviation. According to an indictment from 2013, prior to his arrest in 2018, Xu sought out companies that were recognized as leaders in the aerospace field, both in the United States and abroad. Under the guise of giving presentations at Chinese universities, Xu invited experts who were working at these companies to travel to China, and he paid travel expenses and stipends. This is one of the CCP's ways to commit economic espionage. Another common approach for the CCP to steal technology is to hack into computer systems and steal files. The Commerce Department announced on October 20th a long-awaited ruling that officials hope will help prevent the export or resale of hacking tools to repressive governments. The new rule would prevent the sale of hacking software and equipment to the CCP, to Russia, and to a number of other countries of concern, unless licensed by the Bureau of Industry and Security. Senior Commerce Department officials say what it is not intended to do is prevent American researchers from working with colleagues overseas to uncover software flaws or cybersecurity firms from responding to incidents. The anonymous official said the rationale is these are items that can be misused to abuse human rights, to track and identify dissidents, or disrupt networks or communications, but they also have very legitimate cybersecurity uses. So what the rule does is restrict these exports to problematic countries. The rule has been in the works for years. After being put on hold for fear it would hamper cyber defense efforts, officials hope they have struck the right balance. The cost of IP theft to the American economy is as high as $600 billion annually. In 2020, FBI Director Christopher Wray said that the extent of the CCP's technology and trade secrets theft is so massive that it represents one of the largest transfers of wealth in human history. So, how should we respond in the face of such blatant crimes? We will go into detail tomorrow on an exclusive episode on our membership site, frontpageshow.com. New Zealand reached a free trade agreement with the United Kingdom this week. Both the New Zealand government and opposition parties said the agreement is important to reduce New Zealand's dependence on trade with China. The deal was cemented late Wednesday after 16 months of talks by negotiators. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said the deal was among the best ever achieved by New Zealand and would boost the nation's economy by about $1 billion New Zealand dollars, or about $720 million. It will open the way for increased sales of the country's wine, dairy products, and beef. Reducing the reliance on China for its exports has apparently been the goal of New Zealand's government and the public. Judith Collins, leader of the opposition, urged New Zealand in early October to reach a free trade agreement with the UK and the US as soon as possible. She argued that New Zealand must not continue to let the CCP dominate the Indo-Pacific region. When asked if the deal meant New Zealand would be less reliant on China for its exports, Ardern said diversification would improve options and resilience for its exporters. The UK is also pleased with the agreement. Although trade with New Zealand accounts for only 0.2% of the UK's trade, Britain hopes it will help open the door toward membership in the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said, "This is a great trade deal for the United Kingdom, cementing our long friendship with New Zealand and furthering our ties with the Indo-Pacific." Not long ago, both Japan and Australia also reached free trade agreements with the UK. China is now experiencing a wave of job losses. More than 20,000 foreign companies have announced their departure from China in the last 5 years. Paired with the recent CCP overhaul of the private sector, there has been a wave of layoffs in several industries. The real estate sector experienced the most recession this year. The mainland version of Time magazine counted in September that at least 274 real estate companies in China had declared bankruptcy so far this year, averaging about one closure per day. Another industry, educational services companies, has also experienced a wave of closures and layoffs because of sudden changes in government policy. For example, China's largest after-school tutoring company, New Oriental, planned to lay off 40,000 employees in September. Tech companies also are downsizing, such as ByteDance, which confirmed on October 19th that it is firing up to 70% of its workforce. In comparison, civil service in the government sector is the most stable career. It attracts a large number of young people who are looking for jobs. A clerk position in Tibet's Nagari Prefecture Post Office attracted over 9,000 applications. The civil servant exam, which offers over 16,000 positions, had more than 500,000 people sign up. Such numbers were unimaginable in the past. However, if you go check the official CCP data or the CCP media, you will find a completely different story. In a press conference on October 20th, a CCP official reported that the surveyed unemployment rate averaged 5.2% in the first 9 months of the year, including 4.9% in September, a new low since 2019. This is what the so-called Chinese media reports. One might wonder why the Beijing government is introducing new bills to crack down on the education, fintech, and real estate sectors when so many foreign companies are pulling out of China. Looking at past history, there are many policies of the CCP that do not make sense. It should be said that the policymakers themselves acted without thinking through the actual situation and consequences, and then withdrew them when they found problems. But experts believe that many of these policies have already caused irreversible damage to the Chinese economy. Even withdrawing these policies may not really help China's economy get back on track. Here are just a few recent examples. 2 years ago, facing tough sanctions by President Trump against Chinese chip makers, the CCP used favorable policies to encourage domestic companies to become semiconductor giants. In 2020, more than 22,000 new semiconductor companies were registered in China. However, these new policies did not make China a chip powerhouse. Instead, it has led to a series of reckless investments in poorly planned projects. Nikkei Asia reports that many chip projects have declared bankruptcy within 2 years after receiving millions of dollars in investment from government agencies. Where did the money go? Well, into the pockets of certain individuals, of course. Those companies that have not yet gone bankrupt are also unable to meet the government's expectations. The Technology Politics website protocol reveals that these companies' efforts are focused on the design process, with actual manufacturing still being outsourced to foreign factories in Korea and Taiwan. Even if large Chinese companies are able to make breakthroughs in chip design, they are still far from achieving the goal of full production independence. The Insider revealed that desperate Beijing authorities went so far as to plead with overseas Chinese citizens to buy Japanese semiconductor chips to send back home. Akshay Narang, a geopolitical expert, said the Chinese Communist authorities have realized that the technology industry faces strict regulation, anti-monopoly investigations, and a series of relentless crackdowns. Therefore, the tech industry simply cannot show a real desire to innovate and develop its own chips. So the CCP abandoned plans to make their own chips, and instead it works with other countries. The Chinese government is now working with South Korea memory chip giant SK Hynix to develop chips for the needs of domestic Chinese companies. Since last year, Beijing authorities have been cracking down on the technology and education sector, introducing strict regulatory policies that have dealt a relentless blow to the private sector. As angry foreign investors began to exit China, panicked communist authorities were forced to expand access to foreigners and open up major commodity and equity derivative markets. Narang said the opening of China's financial markets was certainly a major turnaround for the radical socialist policies of the previous period. Chinese citizens are also living through power outages and factory shutdowns. Narang said the reason behind this was simply that Beijing authorities would not allow Australian coal into China, but the Observer Research Foundation revealed that after a year of extreme suffering, China is starting to unload Australian coal from its ports and has lifted the unofficial ban on Australian coal. It certainly seems like the CCP didn't think through what they were doing. After President Trump announced he would launch a social media platform, Truth Social, in early 2020, shares of his partner, Digital World Acquisition Corp, DWAC, closed on October 21st at $35.54 per share, a 350% jump, according to FactSet. More than 470 million shares of DWAC stocks changed hands during Thursday's session. In fact, the stock was halted multiple times due to overactivity. At one point, the stock traded as high as 400% on the day, hitting a record $52 a share. Trump announced Wednesday that the Trump Media and Technology Group, TMTG, will enter into a formal merger agreement with DWAC, making TMTG a publicly traded company subject to regulatory approval. The planned merger values TMTG at $875 million, with a cumulative value of $1.7 billion, as the company could receive an additional $825 million in additional shares. Truth has never been so valuable. Okay, this is our show for today. Thank you for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please don't forget to like and subscribe this video and share it with your friends and family, because everybody deserves to know the truth. Again, thank you for watching Front Page, and we will see you next time.